Hey everybody. So today, just wanted to go through kind of the audit and accountability control family group of NIST 800-171. So we've got, a couple controls here. Just want to talk about, A, what they are, and then B, kind of as a LabVIEW slash, kind of test system developer, what impacts you and what doesn't. So let's dive in. So first one, we have this 3.3.1, which says create and retain system audit logs and records to the extent needed to enable the monitoring, analysis, investigation, and reporting of unlawful or unauthorized system activity. So essentially, right, we need to be recording things that are happening on these systems. So, keeping track of who's using them, what they're doing, stuff like that. So if something ever does happen, we're able to detect it, and or if we ever need to retroactively go look at hey, something that happened in the past, being able to go dive into that information. So not super definitive in terms of how you do this. But I think this is very important on a, especially on an IT system level. What are users doing on IT equipment? But I think especially in a test systems world as well, right? Being aware of what's happening on the system and keeping track of that. So I think, a very basic, and obviously this isn't, applying to unlawful or unauthorized system activity, right? But we a lot of times implement error logging, right? So when an error occurs, we record it to a file. And that's really helpful for, debugging, troubleshooting, etc. So, we can go look back at what's happened and try to figure out what was going on. I think we, just need to kind of expand on that just a little bit further and start recording other details, right? So say hey, this user just, started the system, and this user just did this and this and this, right? And then you're able to keep track of not just errors on your system, but everything that's happening. So if you ever need to go look back at your system and kind of see, hey, what was going on, who was doing what, you can actually recreate essentially step by step what they were doing. So it's up to you on kind of to what extent you log that information. But I think we just need to come up with a good logging solution. And like I said, not super definitive in terms of the type of logging you do, right? Whether that be something like a log file, a database. Another great tool is using syslog, which is basically a network communication protocol where you basically can send a message. And you define a level of that message, right? So is this an error message? Is this informational? Stuff like that. So that way it can be tracked. So that's another great solution. There's a whole bunch of different syslog libraries out there on VIPM. And another great solution, Windows Event Log. So you can similarly log information, based off of, hey, is this an error? Is this informational? All in the Windows Event Logs. And that kind of gives you some extra tools so you can kind of filter and search through that stuff. So there's a lot of options. But I think it's just important that we just keep track of what's going on these systems. So, it helps us as the developers to be able to troubleshoot and understand things. But also in terms of security, right? We're able to basically walk through what was going on a system at any given time, which is helpful. Next control is ensure that the actions of individual system users can be uniquely traced to those users so they can be held accountable for their actions. So we just want to be keeping track of who's doing what. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. One of the easiest ways I've found, if your organization is, if your test system, I guess, is a PC based, type test system, maybe it has embedded components to it. You can just use, there's a property that's app, username, and it tells you who's logged into the computer right now. So instantly who's signed into the computer. Now, granted this, hinges on the fact that you have kind of unique user logins and whatnot for your systems. But that's a really easy way to just pull in and say, hey, who's signed into this computer right now? Yeah, I mean, you can also, build your own login access control system as well. I'm a big fan of using Active Directory and LDAP for a lot of that stuff, right? So I can see who's signed in right now. I can go retrieve credentials and whatnot from them from there, and either give them access to the full software or to certain features. So in these logs, when we're recording what's going on, we just want to be also recording who is doing these things. So not just knowing that, hey, the software got started, a test got started, data got entered, stuff like that, but we actually want to know who's doing those things. Next one, 3.3.3, we've got review and update logged events. So we don't just want to log all of this information. We want to, review it. So even if we don't need that information, we want to look at it every now and then, and we want to see if that information is helpful, and we want to see if it's capturing everything that we need it to capture. So, hey, we might realize, oh yeah, this is totally, we're not logging some step that some user is taking, and that could be important information. So yeah, we just want to be doing some sort of audit or review of those logs and seeing what gaps we might have in what's getting recorded. And again, it's up to you to define the frequency of those and all of that and what your requirements really are. But yeah, we do need to be looking at this information to make sure it's helpful and it's covering everything. We also have next one is alert in the event of an audit logging process failure. So if we have a system that's supposed to be logging this information, we want to make sure that there is some sort of way to trigger an alert if that process fails. So if we're logging data to a file, right, and there's some sort of issue, we don't have access to the file location or something, we don't want the test system to just be able to keep running without being able to log those failures or log the events that are going on. So yeah, we want to make sure that there's some sort of way to trigger an alert. And alert is very vague, right? What is that? Does that mean the test stand becomes unusable? Does that mean it fires off emails to certain people? Does that mean, there's a bunch of different actions. It's kind of up to you to define what that is. But yeah, if we're, recording events to a database, right, and suddenly the database is offline, we want to be aware of that immediately. If we're using syslog and our syslog server goes offline, we want to know about that. So yeah, just making sure you have a way to actually flag when that process fails, especially if you're logging errors to your audit logging process and your audit logging process fails, you're not going to be able to see those errors. So you want to have some sort of secondary way to alert of that. Next we have 3.3.5, correlate audit record review, analysis, and reporting processes for investigation and response to indications of unlawful, unauthorized, suspicious, or unusual activity. So again, we're recording this information. We just need to be looking at it, and we need to be doing analysis to make sure that, hey, is there anything out of the normal going on and anything potentially, unlawful, right? So, just, be looking at these and be analyzing them. We're not just recording information to check a box. We're recording information to improve security. So we need to be actually acting on this data that we're collecting, looking at it, analyzing it, making sure everything seems normal, and making sure that nothing suspicious is going on. Next, provide audit record reduction and report generation to support on-demand analysis and reporting. So coming up with a good way to visualize the stuff that you've recorded. So, you could have this massive log of stuff that's gone on, right? And it could be, millions and millions of records. And, you don't want to have to scroll through, some massive file or some massive, database query to look at information. Like, you want to be able to just simply generate a report on demand that will basically summarize that information for you. So, depending on how it's stored, right, you just need a way to pull that information. This is why it's also very helpful to be categorizing things, because it makes reporting really easy. So if you're using like the Windows event log or syslog or something like that, all of your messages are tied to a specific instance and to a basically level. So you can easily generate reports on different levels, like number of errors and, number of, different, things, right? So, and you can even categorize based off of severities and stuff like that. So it's going to be largely dependent on the tools you're using. But yeah, you just want to have a way that, I can do some small thing, maybe fill in some fields and click a button, and then boom, I have basically a summarized report of all of that log information without someone having to spend hours, reading through stuff and trying to search through it and whatnot. Next, we want to provide a system capability that compares and synchronizes internal system clocks with an authoritative source to generate timestamps for audit records. So we want to have all of these systems synchronized and this really comes down to like basically calibration of time, right? We want things to be synchronized. That way, all these different things might be sending messages across the network saying, hey, this event occurred at this time, Well, if the timestamps are, way off, it can totally, mess with your ability to analyze the data and make decisions and whatnot. So we want to have some sort of way to synchronize those clocks, which there's a lot of different ways to do that. On the IT side, your IT team is probably already going to be setting up a time server for you and synchronizing computers to it. So usually your IT team's just going to take care of this for you on IT systems. But if they don't, you can always manually set a test system to sync up to like NIST time servers. And I have a previous video I've made that shows how to do that if you're interested. But it's really not that complicated. So if you need to, you can always synchronize to NIST. But like I said, your IT team's probably going to be doing all of that for you already. Now, on OT devices, let's think like a compact Rio or a PXI. These devices, usually your IT team isn't the one setting them up and configuring them and stuff like that. It's up to you. So you also want to make sure the clocks on those are synchronized as well if they're recording information. So if you have a compact Rio that's sending syslog messages out to some server, you want to make sure it's synchronized. So, there's different ways you can do that. I really like, there's like a NTP OPKG package you can install, and you just basically pass a server to synchronize to it, and then it does all the work for you, which I'll make a video on that here, coming up. But that's, really nice way I found to do it. It works very well. And then, even your, compact Reels and PXIs and whatnot can be synchronized as well. So, next, we want to protect audit information and audit logging tools from unauthorized access, modification, and deletion. So, we want to make sure that not anyone can just go get into these logs wherever they are and either delete stuff out or change things or anything like that. So if we're writing to files, we need to be able to control those files, right? So either we need to limit permissions of people to be able to access these. So maybe like the software can write to them, but other people can, cannot either access them at all or read only or something like that. If you're using like a database or like a syslog server or something like that, obviously makes it even way easier, right? Because, people can't just, connect to that stuff as easily, right? So it automatically adds kind of a barrier there. And then you have to build your own tools and whatnot, or buy enterprise tools that allow you to visualize that information, which then, helps you control access and whatnot. So, like I said, depending on how you're logging this information, this is going to vary how you protect the information. But the idea is you just don't want people to be able to go in, either delete logs or modify them in any way. And so you just need to come up with a good solution to secure those so not anyone can just go and mess with them. And then last one, limit management of audit logging functionality to a subset of privileged users. So if you have some sort of centralized auditing and process accountability server or something, let's say it's a database or like a syslog collector or any of those, anything in between, right? we want to make sure there's not a million people that can access that and change things and configure things. You want to keep it set to a small subset of people. So it's not just some IP address that everyone can access, but you actually want to restrict access to only a few people. Again, just reducing how many people could actually get in and manage that system. So yeah, you just want to be able to control that. And that's pretty much audit and accountability. And I think for a LabVIEW developer, test system developer, whatever, I think it really just comes down to we just need to be keeping track of what's going on these test systems, not just errors, but everything that's going on in the test system. And we just want to make sure that that information is protected. So not anyone can just go and interfere with it. So how you do that, not defined in this document, right? It's largely up to you to figure out what solution works best for your organization. Like I mentioned a few, there's a lot of different ways you can do this, as there always is, right? Hopefully that was helpful, and thanks for watching. Bye.
Canon Controls is your gateway to mastering LabVIEW. Dive into programming for data acquisition, industrial communications, and manufacturing automation. Explore how to enhance your projects with cybersecurity best practices. Join the journey to elevate your skills and secure your systems with every episode.